I love to cover compelling places from around the world. I've written about underwater cities, restricted areas, and abandoned structures over the course of my channel's history. I realized that it was a natural progression to talk about fictional geography. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'll be uncovering and providing background for places from Fromsoftware's Armored Core series. We'll work our way through the series entries and the various timelines in chronological order. For those that don't know, the Armored Core series places the main character as a usually silent mercenary who takes on jobs from various private military corporations and organizations. They often end up changing the course of history in their timelines, for better or for worse. Armored Cores, ACs for short, are the tools of the main characters. These giant mechs can be outfitted with many different types of upgrades and weapons. They often fight muscle triggers, MTs for short, other mechs that cannot swap weapons, but many other types of enemies haunt the mission stages of these titles. This video will contain some spoilers for the games. Armored Core is separated between different eras of consoles and distinct timelines. Game engines became more advanced over the course of Armored Core's history, and the locations and stories behind them grew in turn. The older games have less story and fewer interesting places, so I'll be covering fewer entries early on in this video. With all of that out of the way, let's get into it. Project Phantasma, released in December 1997 on the original PlayStation. It was released after the first Armored Core game, but marks the beginning of the Gen 1 timeline. The date is year 156. Much of Earth has been made into a wasteland after an apocalyptic war that lasted for 30 years. The conflict between these mysterious warring sides ended after a series of orbital strikes smashed into the planet, forcing humanity underground. Warring corporations in the present day contract mech piloting mercenaries called Ravens. A lone Raven working out of an urban complex called Isaac City receives a request. The information given by the client is cryptic, with the message containing no information outside of a request for the pilot to raid a facility called Amber Crown. The sender promises the mercenary a gigantic sum of money for their troubles. The Raven accepts the mission, and the game begins. The Underground Maze is one of the first missions in Project Phantasma. The player is sent to destroy the research materials of a shadowy organization. This dimly lit area contains winding tunnels filled with quadruped MTs and scorpion-like unmanned machines that attack the player. Targets are concealed by hidden doorways, and the player must move fast to avoid enemy patrols. It's said that the map was heavily inspired by a level called Necron's Coliseum in another FromSoft game, Kingsfield. This game kickstarted the whole series with its release in July 1997, only a few months before Project Phantasma. It takes place in year 158, 2 years after the end of Project Phantasma. Two corporations called Mirakumo Millennium and Chrome are locked in conflict to determine who will control the remnants of humanity. This ongoing war generates plenty of work for ambitious Raven pilots. The main character is a mercenary using the situation to make ends meet. This old military facility was constructed far before the events of Armored Core. It houses ancient technology made by the nations that existed before the catastrophe. The player enters the area at the behest of the Earth Environment Reclamation Committee, who discovered the facility recently. They now research the facility and try their best to conceal its existence from the corporations. The player conducts multiple missions in the facility throughout the game. The corporations eventually find the tech cache, and the facility becomes war-torn as multiple factions vie for control. The player destroys the facility as part of a contract for Chrome, and humanity loses an opportunity to settle the outside world. The Isaac City parking garage is a 5-floor building. It houses the vehicles of important business executives. It becomes the scene of a standoff when a terrorist piloting an MT is cornered inside. The player is hired by the city to take out the lone MT, but the mission has a major caveat. The mission briefing says this: several civilian vehicles remain in the garage. Damage to the vehicles will be deducted from your pay. Sorry, but we've got budget problems too. Good luck. The jungle of the Foul City Office District is broken up by superhighways, park areas, and a metro station. It is the scene of a biological outbreak when strange organisms from deep within the Earth's core erupt from the ground and drive the populace out of the district. The player is given a mission by the city to take out these insectoids. The player can attack the district if they choose to side with Chrome later on in the game. In this scenario, the city sends a bipedal AC to fight the player. The AC, which has the call sign Valkyrie, is equipped with a high-powered sniper rifle capable of throwing the player across the map with the force of its impact. This lab is the source of the organisms that attacked Gal City. The facility was funded by Chemicaldyne, a front for Chrome. The lab is divided into various habitats. It is a testbed for biological weapons. Murakumo Millennium tasks the main character to infiltrate and dismantle the test vats. Doing this causes the lab to be taken over by dangerous organisms, throwing a wrench into Chrome's research. Finally, I'll cover the Zom Desert. The desert is a barren wasteland full of mines that were left behind by long-gone armies. The more intriguing part of the desert and its associated mission is the antagonists. The Raven is sent to eliminate a gang that stole military hardware and went out into the desert. The gang is called Dark Soul. The name happens to be a complete coincidence, at least according to the game developers, and is unrelated to the famous Fromsoftware series, which would release much later. Master of Arena was released for the PlayStation in December 1999. It takes place in the same year as AC-1, in year 158. Chrome and Murakumo's war has grown in scale, and millions are now caught in the crossfire. A lone civilian survivor of one of these battles loses his entire family to an AC with a pilot named Hustler 1. He trains and takes on the mantle of a Raven in order to take revenge on Hustler 1. Hustler 1 pilots an iconic AC with the call sign 9-Ball. This mission is rare within the universe of the first 3 games, taking place in Earth's upper atmosphere instead of the depths of the underground cities. The Raven is sent to make contact with a research team that is exploring a derelict spaceship. The ship was operated by a long-defunct space agency and was recently pulled into Earth's orbit. It immediately becomes a point of interest for the corporations. The interior is full of patrolling float suits, gigantic hovering exoskeletons that are powerful enough to square up with the player. The remnants of the Dark Soul gang return in another mission from Master of Arena. This group took control of a pre-destruction era tank and used it to raid facilities in the Xi'an desert. The tank is more of a land battleship, and the player must take out all of its weapons to complete the mission. FromSoft entered a new generation of games with the release of Armored Core 2 in 2000, which was made for the PS2. This entry takes place over 60 years after Master of Arena, in year 223. Humanity has settled Mars, and a corporation called Matrix has invested resources to terraform the Red Planet. The other powers on Earth learn of this, and war breaks out as each faction vies for control of the new Martian colonies. The player is a lone mercenary set on helping the colonies achieve independence from Earth. The Idonia Ocean is a massive body of water that stretches for thousands of square miles on the surface of Mars. It was one of the major projects developed by Matrix in the initial terraforming of Mars. The ocean is a public resource in the game's setting, but Raven takes multiple contracts to attack encroaching corporations that intend to turn the inland ocean into a base of operations. The STAI is one of the most powerful superweapons in this Armored Core timeline. This space battleship was built by the Bolena Corporation and is reconstructed from ancient blueprints from another age. It's commandeered by Earth's government in the final stages of Armored Core 2. The STAI is armed with planet-killing weaponry and can strike targets from deep within the depths of space. It serves as both a set piece and a battleground in the final act of the game. The STAI isn't the only superweapon in the story. Phobos is the final mission of the game. The player is sent to take out a terrorist leader named Leos Klein. A rumor within the Armored Core community says that Klein is the protagonist of a past Armored Core game, as he is said to have destroyed Hustler 1, the final boss of Master of Arena. The player's contractor, the Earth government, receives a transmission from Klein. Klein claims that Mars's moon, Phobos, is a gigantic mobile weapon left behind by a long-dead civilization. The government believes that Klein is calling their bluff. Phobos begins to shift and is pulled into Mars' orbit. The player is sent on a final mission to investigate Phobos and take out Klein in a gambit to stop the decimation of life on Mars. This game is the last in the timeline. It came out in November 2002. It's been 5 years since the Raven took out Klein and stopped Phobos from crashing into Mars. Earth is attempting to move its population from the underground cities to the terraformed Red Planet. However, Earth is struggling as the corporations are building up once again. Earth's leadership has elected to shift their efforts from transporting settlers to preparing for an armed conflict. Meanwhile, the underground cities prepare to enact a rebellion to throw down both the government and the corporations. Outside of that, there's little plot. The player is a mercenary conducting missions against the backdrop of this overarching story. The Z-Arm Desert is a remote surface region on Earth, filled with the husks of modern cities and gigantic machinery. It's the setting for several important missions. The player is sent to investigate a new site that's been established by the Bolena Corporation. This group constructed the massive space battleship that was in Armored Core 2. The player sneaks into the facility and uncovers blueprints for a new weapon called Grey Cloud. The player has to face a prototype of Grey Cloud to complete the mission. The weapon is a massive MT equipped with rail cannons and other powerful weaponry. One entity ruled the world. It was simply called the Controller. The Controller handled the major decisions of everyone's life. People took it for granted that the Controller would handle every aspect of their lives for them. Under the rule of the Controller, people lived safe, yet uninspired lives. As time went on, several powerful factions known as corporations came onto the scene. In their separate struggles to gain absolute power, the corporations waged war upon each other. The controller even manipulated the corporation's war. All was going according to the plans of the controller, but somehow the forces of chaos began to rise. That was taken from the opening crawl of Armored Core 3. This timeline includes Armored Core 3 and its associated games. Armored Core 3 was released for the PS2 and PSP in April 2002. The plot is very similar to the last timeline. Humanity has been forced underground by a massive nuclear war. The remnants of civilization built an underground world called Layered. 3 major corporations are fighting over the limited resources left in Layered. A godlike artificial intelligence called the Controller manipulates the many warring factions within the labyrinth, but a resistance group has formed to combat the AI. The player is, yet again, a lone raven piloting a powerful armored core. Armored Core 3's story is more closely tied to location than the previous games in the last generation. Layered is the primary setting of this generation of games. It's composed of First Layered and Second Layered. These underground cities were built by a handful of neutral nations who predicted that a nuclear war was on the horizon. They are gigantic and self-sustaining. Citizens are sustained by endlessly recycled air, food, and water while living under artificial skies. The cities required massive amounts of administration to operate properly, and advanced AIs were given increased responsibilities. This resulted in the birth of the Controller, which was designed to provide for Layered's inhabitants. First Layered is named for the multiple levels that make up the city. Layer 1 has housing districts, parks, nature preserves, and research hubs. Layer 2 holds waste disposal areas, while the third is composed of industrial complexes and abandoned sectors. Layer 4 has energy production facilities. We'll discuss Second Layered later on in Silent Line. Nair Bridge is an asset of the Mirage Company located in the Industrial Research Layer. It was built to connect 2 separate districts, and the increase in trade resulted in Mirage gaining support for many of the zone's residents. Other corporate entities became jealous of the bridge's existence, and the Kisaragi Corporation drew up plans to destroy the bridge and pin the blame on Mirage. Raven can either defend the bridge from mercenaries disguised as construction MTs, or take a job to blow it up themselves. Avalon Hill is nested inside of the nature area in Layer 1. This gigantic underground wasteland was the site of a corporate battle hundreds of years in the past. The debris of a large seagoing ship, the Avalon, gives the place its name. The former underground ocean is a desert that holds some rare plant life. The Ostraca is also a large ship, although it is in better shape. This ancient research vessel is owned by Mirage. It suffered a fatal hull failure during a voyage and sank beneath the Arctic waters in the nature area. It's not explicitly stated, but it seems likely that the Controller was involved in its sinking. The water froze over, leaving the Ostraca entombed in ice. The Raven takes a job for Mirage. Their assignment is to retrieve a valuable capsule left by the long-gone research team. Section 732 is a city that was sent into the waters of the nature preserve after an earthquake shattered the dam, keeping the sea at bay. It's the home of C-101D, a terrifying submersible weapon that was barely contained by the corporations. The massive weapon is an autonomous unit made by the Controller AI. It's heavily armed with cannons and grenade and missile launchers. It fires these in a volley that can easily knock ACs out of the sky. It submerges into the sea in order to avoid taking damage from the player. The Ruglin Laboratory in Layer 1 is menaced by strange organisms. These creatures are classified as B7723C. Their origin is unknown. These six-legged arthropodic predators have thick carapaces and can shoot energy from their mandibles at hostile targets. Their length is close to the height of an average AC. The conservation area is a pretty interesting setting for the Armored Core games. It's not an urban zone or a desolate desert. It's a massive rainforest that serves as the headquarters for Union, a group dedicated to overthrowing the controller. The Magna ruins are a long abandoned series of winding hallways, deep within Layered. The ruins serve an important role in the story, as moving through them allows the Raven to access the controller's main system. The Magna ruins are another unique environment, as the hallways are decorated with classic Greek columns and medieval architecture. The background for this location is vague, but some temple structures and altars within the ruins point to it once being a meeting area or place of worship for some shadowy group. Silent Line was released for the PS2 in January 2003. It's been some time since the end of the last game. The Raven liberated Layered from the controller, and mankind has been allowed to leave their home to reclaim Earth's surface. The corporations expand and build factories and fortresses throughout the continents. A continent far to the south is guarded by a massive automated defense network called the Silent Line. A new Raven is sent to unravel the secrets of the Silent Line. The Laudus weapons factory was built by Crest and is dangerously close to the Silent Line. A satellite-mounted cannon orbits near the site and takes occasional potshots at the facility. A valuable mineral deposit ensures that Crest continues to keep a presence there despite the imminent danger. The player is sent to defend the factory from a massive attack funded by the rival corporation, Mirage. The Vilius laboratory is home to another biological enemy, called B1037F C-type. These weapons are floating heads kept aloft by telekinetic energy. Their head looks like some kind of cephalopod. They are capable of emitting a rapid-fire laser from their mouth. This piece of airspace serves as the testing ground for new technology. The Raven accepts a mission from Crest. They are told that they will be testing generator enhancements that would usher in a new generation of ACs. The test is interrupted by an attack from Mirage, who desperately want to destroy the prototype. They deploy AG-A0XX, a large flying MT equipped with a variety of different weapons. It leads a few squads of large power suits armed with missiles and pulse rifles. Second Layered is the twin of the Layered underground city, located far behind the Silent Line. The city is almost devoid of life when the player explores it. It seems likely that most of the population was unable to escape the city before the governing AI went berserk. The Raven defeats the AI controlling the Silent Line, enabling the survivors to return to the upper levels of the city. The final cutscene shows a corporate transport plane flying over the deactivated Silent Line to deliver supplies to the freed people. This game was released in March 2004 for the PS2. It's been 55 years since the ending of the Silent Line, and the corporations have begun another gigantic war. A new organization called Novice has entered the scene out of nowhere. They possess powerful new technology and rely on a classified resource to fund their operations. The other corporations quickly assemble their forces to stop the newcomers and to uncover what powers the Novice Corporation. However, world-ending weaponry that has laid dormant for thousands of years has come online, and the fate of Armored Core 3's world hangs in the balance. Bayload City is the location for many missions throughout Nexus. It's the headquarters of Novice and is under constant attack from many major corporations. It has fortifications and walls that look down on desolate expanses of desert and vast mountain ranges. The old weapon facility, underneath the gargantuan Borthos mine, holds the final boss of Nexus. The mech is called Nineball in the English translation, who was a major villain in the original Armored Core timeline. It's an extremely fast mech that's armed with vertical missile launchers and plasma cannons. It can also use a powerful mounted weapon, but it must stay stationary in order to use it. The player defeats Nineball, but in the process uncovers the thing that Nineball was guarding. It's also the resource that Novice was drawing upon. The facility is full of millions of high-tech explosive drones, enough to raise the surface of Earth. It's been manufacturing them for thousands of years. The player goes out in a final blaze of glory, fighting off the newly reactivated weapons, and the events of Armored Core Last Raven begin. The unmanned weapons then ravage the surface world. Armored Core Last Raven is the final title to be released for the PS2. It came out in November 2006, over 2 years after Nexus. Novice is gone, and the world of Armored Core 3 is in tatters after the drone Arsenal released its deadly payload. The Raven mercenaries have gathered together to overthrow the corporations. The mercenaries are exhausted by the constant corporate rule and oppression, and seek to stop the cycle of war on Earth. The corporations have consolidated their power out of fear of the Ravens to form their own alliance. The leader of the Ravens has declared that he will launch an all-out war in 24 hours. Other Ravens have sided with the corporation or even gone out on their own, turning the world into a patchwork of fiefdoms. The player arrives on the scene and is given an ultimatum to join a side. Last Raven is the first Armored Core game to feature branching endings. It has 6. Each set of missions depicts the time ticking down to the start of the war. The Triton Eco-Activity Center is a black site controlled by the Alliance. It was built by the Kisaragi Corporation and another powerful, unnamed organization. The facility is full of different unmanned and biological weapons undergoing test trials. The Raven can either sabotage or protect the facility to aid various factions. The Tartarus Complex was the headquarters of the now extinct Mirage Corporation. It was full of ancient recovered technology, granting Mirage an edge in their attempts to control the world. The massive drone attack in Nexus permanently crippled Tartarus, damaging much of the recovered technology and causing Mirage to abandon the site. Both the Ravens and the Alliance seek to raid the headquarters for any remaining tech. The Internecine is the final place I'll cover in the Armored Core 3 timeline. The Internecine is a massive cylindrical structure buried deep underground. It is powered by 6 generators and possesses powerful defenses. This AI system manufactures the unmanned drones, along with powerful remote-controlled mechs called pulverizers. It is designed to destroy all human life on the surface of Earth. The player's decisions throughout the game determine the winning faction, and what happens to the Internecine system. This is the final timeline I'll cover tonight. This generation of games includes Armored Core 4, For Answer, Armored Core 5, and Verdict Day. It has the most driven storyline out of all the generations I'll talk about, and my favorite lore. This timeline begins in the near future. Humanity experiences a period of massive population growth, causing instability within the global economy. The gap between the wealthy and the poor deepened, and violence and conflict escalated throughout all of the world. As terrorism increased, the people gradually turned to the corporations, which used private armies to ensure the security of all the nations. The 6 most powerful corporations overthrew the various countries in the conflict called the National Dismantlement War. Powerful new armored cores enabled them to take over the world in less than a month. The Pax Economica is established, and the world is divided into corporate colonies. Armored Core 4 starts at this point. This game was released for the PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2006. The player, called Anatolia's Raven in the story, pilots a Next, the new iteration of the Armored Core. The Nexts possess greater speed, tougher armor, and more powerful weaponry. The pilots are typically given the title Lynx instead of the traditional Raven. The player is hired by Anatolia, a small colony that has been able to profiteer off of the Next technology. Anatolia is well known for the engineer Harfelt, who was responsible for many of the innovations that resulted in the development of the Next. He used the profits of these sales to keep Anatolia independent from the direct rule of the corporations. He passes away, which results in an economic crisis. Anatolia is forced to hire the Raven to defend their territory. However, a gigantic war between the corporations is brewing, and Anatolia is poised to be in the center of the conflict. Griffin is a former independent city located in Queensland, Australia. It takes some visual cues from San Francisco, with a similar skyline and a bridge that is modeled on the Golden Gate Bridge. Its defining factor is that it's located far offshore. The city was abandoned after the National Dismantlement War, when terrorists destroyed much of the infrastructure and crippled the city's defenses. It was later rebuilt by the GA Corporation and heavily fortified with pyrocyon cannons, large truck-mounted laser weapons. Another mission in Griffin has the player attack the Fermi, an air fortress equipped with powerful missiles and tough armor. Former Peace City is a wasteland in Saudi Arabia. The city, which was once the site of several war memorials, peace gardens, and museums, was devastated during the National Dismantlement War. Broken buildings and skyscraper-high sand dunes serve as a backdrop for some of the most violent Next battles in Armored Core 4 and For Answer. The Queenslands is a large cruise ship home to the Bernard and Felix Foundation's leadership. The Bernard and Felix Foundation, BFF for short, is a powerful company that is well known for their long-range weaponry and seagoing vessels. They aren't particularly innovative with their technology, but possess the largest navy in the Armored Core 4 universe. The Raven is given a mission by GA to take out the Queenslands, which is protected by a massive defense fleet. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, helicopters, and multiple warships all try to bring the Raven down. Despite this, the Raven manages to destroy the Queenslands, permanently destabilizing BFF. The Gear Tunnel allows for fast transit between Earth's continents. High-speed trains deliver goods and military supplies to different corporate colonies through these cavernous spaces. A more sinister force attempts to use the tunnel to reach Anatolia towards the end of the game. The Raven's handler, receives reports that an unidentified experimental weapon is rapidly approaching Anatolia through the tunnel. The player drops in to investigate. All of a sudden, a mobile fortress bursts through a wall, and the player must flee through the railway system. The weapon, called Urzragna, gives chase, and the player must dodge its attacks and bring it down. Exaville is a bizarre-looking structure floating on Great Slave Lake in Canada, which is the deepest lake in North America at 2,014 feet deep. The building features a fan-shaped structure held up by several pillars. Its foundation lies at the bottom of the lake, and its top soars far above the surface of the water. It's the home base of Ray Leonard, a Canadian corporation that produces Next fuel cells and other parts. The player attacks Exaville after Ray Leonard attacks Anatolia during the war between the corporations. The corporation deploys autonomous Nexts and a small fleet to defend Exaville, but the Raven succeeds in destroying the structure. For Answer is one of the most famous titles in the series, with its opening cinematics having gained hundreds of thousands of views. It's got one of my favorite storylines in the series as well, and some of my favorite background tracks. For Answer was released for the PS3 and Xbox 360 in March 2008. It's been decades since the last game, and a major development has reshaped Earth dramatically. Deadly Kojima particles, output from the generators that power the Nexts, pollute the surface and poison those living there. The surviving corporations elected to build flying cities capable of holding hundreds of millions of inhabitants. They are called cradles and travel in groups. Both the ships and the formations they travel in are called cradles. Kojima particles contamination has forced humanity to live over 22,000 feet above the planet's surface. The corporations fled to the cradles, and fearing the mercenaries, left them, along with billions of people, to suffer in the irradiated lands below. The pilots now eke out an existence, fighting each other over the few remaining centers of civilization. Some pilots have formed a resistance called Orca, and seek to band together to stop the League of Corporations. Their exact plans remain shrouded, but Orca's overall goal is to allow mankind to leave Earth. Another power called Line Arc has come together to form a maritime power dedicated to spreading freedom and democracy. They are supported by the Next, White Glint, who is actually the protagonist of the last game. Each faction uses gigantic superweapons called arms forts to maintain their power. The player is an ambitious mercenary named Strayed. The game has 3 different endings. I'll talk more about them as I cover For Answer's locations. The port of Mimir is a large naval base in an isolated valley. The base is sheltered from the elements by high rock walls. It's protected by various MTs and mechs from the Interior Union faction. Strayed must destroy some supply ships and escape before enemy reinforcements can arrive. An optional enemy the player can fight is the AF Stigro, a marine-type arms fort. The Stigro is designed to destroy enemy fleets from afar. It is AI-piloted and armed with missiles and a laser blade, and can reach extreme speeds to avoid enemy attacks. The boat was created by a famous Japanese mecha designer named Kazutaka Miyatake, who is best known for his Macross designs. He went on to do some designs for Armored Core 6. He made the Enforcer boss, Carla's mech, and the Ephemera parts set. The Northwest Sea is a staging ground for the BFF Corporation, one of the more powerful corporations in the previous game. Strayed is hired by the Interior Union, who were impressed by their performance on the attack on Mimir. The player must intercept BFF's 8th Fleet and take out Gigabase, a superweapon. The Arms Fort is an amphibious assault fortress mass-produced by GA America. It has cannons, machine guns, and missile launchers, but is an easy target for a good Next pilot. Cradle layout. 50 meters are allocated to one household containing 4 people. 15,000 households are in one section. 4 sections make up a cave. 34 caves comprise a single aircraft, and one aircraft contains 8,160,000 people. A cradle is 4 kilometers long. Cradle 21 is a gigantic flying colony ship high in Earth's atmosphere. Strayed is sent to clear an insurgent group called Liliana from inside Cradle 21. The player is told to take out the insurgents' mech forces while damaging as little of the colony as possible. During the mission, the player can see small white specks floating in space far above Cradle 21. These are assault cells, large unmanned platforms equipped with powerful anti-air weapons. They were set up all around the globe by the corporations. This was done to remove humanity's ability to travel to space, preventing the corporations from getting a leg up over each other in their wars. They directly affect the geopolitics of Armored Core 4's universe. Orca wants to allow humanity to achieve space travel. To do this, they plan to activate the Ehrenberg anti-satellite cannon array in Antarctica. This is the only weapon system that can reach high enough to clear the objects in space without also leaving debris that could destroy ships leaving orbit. Fortunately, Orca needs more power to do this. That power must come from the generators allowing the cradles to stay aloft. Orca will have to take out millions of innocents in the cradles to ensure that humanity can leave an irradiated Earth for the stars. The alternative is the eventual end of life on Earth, as the Kojima particles ascend upwards to slowly strangle the inhabitants of the cradles. Peace City makes another appearance in the Armored Core 4 universe. It's the background obscenery for one of the most famous battles in Armored Core history. The following comes from the in-game mission briefing.
I'll tell you about your mission. The client is Omer Science Technology. The target is BFF Corporation's main arms fort, Spirit of Motherwill. The enemy AF is armed with large-bore, long-range ordnance. It's an oversized, out-of-date machine, but the long-range punch it can deliver still makes it a serious threat. To counter this, the client has proposed you use a Vanguard overboost unit to approach your target. Its tremendous speed should allow you to close on the target's perimeter without getting hit. Once you've closed in, target the gun batteries. Destroying those guns should also cause damage to the machine's interior. It's pretty poorly designed, but that kind of sloppy work is expected of them. That's the briefing.
Strayed fights the gigantic walking arms fort, the Spirit of Motherwill. It resembles an aircraft carrier with legs and can launch planes from its runways and mount long-range attacks with its heavy weapons and artillery. It is defended by many mechs and MTs. The arms fort is considered obsolete, but still serves as a command base for BFF's ground forces. Strayed is sent in to fight the Spirit of Motherwill and destroy it by attacking its vulnerable interior sections. The Spirit of Motherwill is defended by a lone Next piloting mercenary on the mission's hard mode. He has the call sign Killdozer.
You must be Raven. One of the infamous handler Walter's hounds. Interesting. You ready to climb the wall?
Great Wall is a GA-owned arms fort that transverses the upper steppes of East Eurasia. This weapon resembles a train. It is several miles long. It's considered one of the greatest land-based weapons built in this universe. It can reach speeds that rival the Stigro from earlier in the video, and has Gatling gun emplacements and missile launchers along its length. It doubles as a command base and troop carrier for GA's Next pilots. Its outer shell grants it invulnerability from Next weaponry, with its only weakness being the internal power source at the rear of the arms fort. Arteria Carpalis looks pretty normal. It's an industrial area surrounded by fortifications in stretches of desert. Arteria Carpalis serves a vital role in the story of Furancer. It is one of the main energy facilities that help to power the cradles. As such, it becomes a battleground in each playthrough. Strayed can either aid Orca in taking over the facility, resulting in the destruction of the satellites and the fall of the cradles, or defend it, allowing the corporations to keep the cradles aloft. There's another option that I'll discuss in a little bit. Arms Fort Answerer. This mission helps unlock the Revolutionist ending, where you assist in the activation of the anti-satellite cannons, allowing humanity to enter space at the cost of the lives of those on the cradles. The player must defeat the Answerer, a powerful arms fort controlled by the League of Corporations. This weapon floats and is extremely high-tech because it floats. It possesses deadly Kojima weaponry and shielding that protects it from long-range attacks. The Answerer looks alien and almost organic, with its branching petals and pinecone-like sternum. The corporations deploy it in a last-ditch effort to stop Orca's plans involving the cannons. The back of the corporation's forces is broken after the defeat of the Answerer, allowing Orca to succeed in their plans. The Answerer was designed by Makoto Kobayashi, who is known for his work on Zeta Gundam, Ice, and Steam Boy, among other properties. He published an art book called Hyperweapon years ago, which I'll probably make a video on in the future. At this point, you probably remember how I described the endings. One results in the destruction of the satellites, and the other ends with humanity remaining in the cradles. Well, what if you wanted to do neither of these things, instead decided to team up with a madman to take out everyone? That is the crux of the Old King ending. The player decides to side with Old King, a Next pilot who was aligned with Orca. He was kicked out due to his deepening insanity and constant bloodthirstiness. Old King simply wants to burn the world and cause as much damage to each faction as possible. You can team up with him in the mission Destroy Cradle 03, which is unlocked on New Game Plus.
Greetings, Lapdog. This is Old King. We're going to destroy Cradle 03. Care to join us? Orca has been too lenient for too long.
Old King offers Strayed a job. He will pay a credit for each 100 human lives taken with the destruction of Cradle 03. The player destroys the ships, taking out 100 million people and sending the colonies plummeting into Earth at high speed. The famous track Remember plays as Strayed goes about taking out the inhabitants. The mission is completed, and the player is awarded 1,000,000 credits.
終わったか。まだまだ腐るほどいるがな。面倒だが先は長いぜ。相棒。
Everyone, from Orca to Line Arc and the corporations, are horrified at what you have done. The Interior Union hires you for one last job. They send you to secure Arteria Carpalis, seemingly on a mission to secure the power source for the cradles.
Please accept my apologies. That briefing you saw was manufactured. This is the end of the road for you. I think you understand why.
It's in reality a setup. You have doomed millions, and the Interior Union, and everyone else, wants to put you down like a rabid animal. Multiple Next pilots from every major faction are waiting for you. All are outraged at your actions and seek to take you out. Pilots say lines like, "Maybe it's just an animal. Can he even understand what we're saying?" And, "Well, it is what it is. Your actions were clearly deliberate. There's no point in trying to reason with you." In the end, you win and take out the Cradles, becoming the greatest monster ever seen in human history. That was depressing. I mean, all the endings are depressing in various ways, but the Old King ending is by far the grimmest. There is no glimmer of hope. What is interesting to me is some people try to justify the actions of Strayed and the goals of Old King despite the sheer brutality and horror of the Old King ending. Outside of Old King, I honestly think that the story's paths give the player some serious dilemmas. That's just one of the many things that makes For Answer such a distinct entry in the series, at least to me. Armored Core 5 released on the PS3 and Xbox 360 in March 2012. This is where the continuity of this universe becomes more convoluted. Many seem to think that this is a prequel to Armored Core 4 and For Answer, as the mechs are far slower than Nexus. However, basically all the other evidence suggests that Armored Core 5 takes place after For Answer. Verdict Day, which is set 100 years after Armored Core 5, contains multiple references to For Answer. A future city is torn apart in a vicious war. A dictator called Father controls the city, but a resistance is fighting back to free the inhabitants. The mechs of this game are far slower and weaker than the Nexus, with the technological downgrade being comparable to swapping from an AC to an MT. Once again, the player is a mercenary. They are set on abolishing Father's rule. This game isn't guided by its story, instead being designed as a multiplayer combat experience, so unfortunately, I actually don't have any particularly intriguing places to cover in this section. The lore of the locations is that sparse. Verdict Day was released for the PS3 and Xbox 360 in September 2013. It was the last Armored Core title to be published for almost a decade, until the release of Armored Core 6 in 2023. It's set over 100 years after the previous game. The contamination that kept humanity isolated from the rest of the world finally subsided, allowing the different factions to resettle. A raven is sent out into the wastes by their handler, looking for work and reward from the various corporations. The Pierre snowfield is riddled with the broken fuselages of wrecked cradles. This could mean that the Orca ending was canon. In this case, the way to space was cleared, and humanity could go out into the stars. It's also possible that Strayed destroyed the cradles, forcing humanity to retreat into the city of Armored Core 5. The Spirit-class moving fortress is a broken clone of the Spirit of Motherwill, armed with an incredible amount of weaponry, with multiple laser cannons, heat weapons, gun batteries, and missile launchers. The boss fight with it requires a full 4-person team for the players to even stand a chance of beating it. It serves as decoration in a mission in the Dozer Desert, and appears as an operational machine and an enemy in a later stage. The Dozer Desert is the scene for the final mission of Verdict Day. The mission is best known for the song which plays throughout. It's a track called Mechanized Memories, which has millions of views across social media, and has been remixed multiple times by Fromsoftware's sound team. The mercenary is sent to fight Jay, who cloned a version of the original pilot of the famous White Glint mech from Armored Core 4. It's stated that Jay was used in the Great War, a mythic event in which a league of corporations warred against a rogue group seeking independence. This sounds like the conflict between Orca and the League in Armored Core For Answer. J was sealed away for thousands of years, only to be uncovered and used by a corporation to assume power. The corporation assesses the player to be a major threat and sends J to end them. The fight is laughably one-sided, with J piloting a mech the rough equivalent of a Next, while the player uses a ramshackle normal AC. The player wins and upsets the world of Armored Core. They take out the clone of White Glint, leaving the future of Earth in this universe an open question. That concludes the final timeline I'll cover tonight. Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon is the newest entry in the series, and was released just under a decade after Armored Core Verdict Day came out. It's awesome, very hard, I'd recommend it. I'd cover some locations from the new entry, but there's been far more lore coverage of Fires of Rubicon than the other games. I'll quickly mention an intriguing theory before I call it a night. Humanity was able to destroy the satellites and reach space in the Orca ending of For Answer. Some believe that Fires of Rubicon continues the story of humanity expanding into the universe after the conclusion of For Answer. Survivors on Earth, in this theory, went on to reclaim the world in Armored Core 5 and its sequel. I love that concept. It'll be interesting to see where FromSoft decides to take Armored Core in the future. Well, that is it for tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I had a great time making it. It was surprisingly fun to look so in depth into a universe I wasn't initially that familiar with. I also found an intriguing book about the concept art for Armored Core 4 and For Answer, which I'll have to read in my free time now. You might see a video on the concept art or enemies of these games in the near future. Maybe even Hyperweapon. We'll see. If you liked what you saw or heard and would like to support me, please check out the links in the description. Take care and have a great night.